Good evening, members. We appear to have gone live streaming. Welcome to the Policy Committee of the 2nd of February, the budget setting meeting. I'm sure you've all seen the news. Bit sad news in the fact that we've lost a member of this Policy Committee in Councillor Welsh, but we've also lost Tom Moore today. Gets it, Sir Captain Tom. He did come to Craven and meet some members of staff and school children and everything else. So a bit of a sad do, but we'll move on with the meeting, members. So item 1, apologies for absence and substitutes, please, Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. We've got apologies from Councillor Heseltine and Councillor Shuttleworth is acting as substitute. And at this point, can I just do a quick roll call of members, please? Thank you. So if you can just indicate that you're present, please, when I call your name out. Obviously, Chairman, you're present. Councillor Barrett?
Present.
Councillor Ireton?
Present.
Councillor Liss?
Present.
Councillor Madeley?
Present.
Councillor Metcalfe? Councillor Metcalfe? You're muted, Councillor Metcalfe. Can you just indicate that you're present, just for the record, please? Thanks.
Yes, apologies. I'm just having a bit of a internet issue. It keeps breaking up. So
okay, I can hear you. Okay, thank you. Councillor Morell? No, we don't appear to have Councillor Morell. Councillor Mulligan?
Present.
Councillor Myers?
Present.
Councillor Noland?
I'm here.
Councillor Place?
Present.
Councillor Rose?
Present.
Councillor Wheeler?
Present.
And Councillor Shuttleworth?
Yes, present.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on, confirmation of minutes. Members, are we happy with the minutes? Just looking around. Nobody's shouting, waving, or throwing sticks about, so we'll assume they're okay. Public participation, not been notified of anybody wishing to speak.
No, Chair, but sorry, can we just have a show of hands for the minutes? Can we have a proposer and a seconder, if that's all right? Thank you.
Second, Chairman.
I'll propose them, so from the chair. And a show of hands, please, members. Looks like for those who were here, they've all stuck their hand up. So
thank you, Chair.
Declaration, public participation. We haven't got anybody. Declarations of interest. Looking round at members. Anybody waving madly? Not seeing anybody. No hands gone up. So thank you. Moving straight on then to agenda item 5. The revenue budget, medium-term financial plan. Over to you, Councillor Mulligan.
Thank you, Chairman. So members, the purpose of this report is for members to recommend a fully funded revenue budget for 2021-22 and a level of council tax to council, to recommend a prudent level of general fund revenue balances for the financial year, and to outline the medium-term financial plan to 2024-25. So those members who were able to attend the recent budget briefing will recall there's tremendous uncertainty underpinning the forecasts beyond 2021-2022, as all of the council government funding sources are due to be reviewed, including business rates, new homes bonus, and the underlying funding formulae the government uses to distribute resources to council. The proposed net revenue budget is 7.133 million compared to 7.042 million in 2020-2021, a net increase of £91,000 in last year's total. Details of the budget are shown within Appendix B. Appendix D shows the income and savings plan projects which have so far been completed in 2020-2021, and those that have been classed as green that have been included within the 21-22 budget, and items totaling £209,000 classed as amber that we are confident can be delivered in 21-22. The budget proposed today is based on a provisional settlement announced in December 2020 The final settlement has not yet been received, although it is unlikely that it would change any of the proposals within the budget significantly. If there are any changes, the adjustments required will most likely result in a slightly revised allocation of the new homes bonus funding, but would not change the recommendation to the full council to increase council tax by an average of £5. As part of the provisional settlement, the minister announced that district councils with a current council tax under £250 would continue to have the freedom to raise council tax at Band D by £5 a year, just under 10p per week. The report has therefore been compiled using the option of a £5 increase to give an average council tax of £182.21 at Band D. So given the background of 10 challenging years and in the context of more uncertainty going forward, the proposals within the budget for 21-22 are fair. And although the budget assumes some cash support to deliver a balanced position, this is done in a reasonable and prudent way that does not create additional risks for the council in future years. And I would just finish by saying I'm very proud of this council and its financial officers. And I would like to thank them for putting together this budget. I think we are on a sound financial footing. The finances are in good order. And I'm very proud to, again, to present a balanced budget for 21-22. I move the recommendations in paragraph 2. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Patrick. And a big thanks to you as well. I know you spend a lot of time with Richard with these figures, making sure everything works, and that we do end up with a balanced budget at the end of the year. It's vitally important. So big thank you to you as well. Looking around, members, hands up, questions, queries. Councillor Shuttleworth. You're muted, Councillor Shuttleworth.
Sorry about that. Apologise. I was trying to look at 2 things on my screen at once. Isn't a clever thing to do. Members will recall, or certainly exactly 12 months ago, that it was agreed that a recommendation from the Select Committee be implemented in terms of additional planning officer members for particular reasons to improve the enforcement function of the council. Can you, without me going through all these columns of figures with a magnifying glass, please confirm that such provision has been made for the forthcoming year?
I believe Paul Ellis has sent an email around explaining that we are getting more help in planning. I've only just glanced at that email today, but maybe Paul or Richard would like to comment.
Please, Paul.
Happily comment on that aspect, Councillor Mulligan. Yeah, that is additional help to come in at a senior level to actually oversee mainly the planning improvement. So the working with the Planning Improvement Board to deal with the agreed actions, which indeed are on your agenda tonight. So that's where the focus of that will be. But of course, that does give additional help. I know David and Paul have worked on looking at other officers to bring in with not too much success. I don't know if David's got any updates specifically on the planning enforcement that he wants to give, but certainly in terms of the budget, it was in the base budget, my understanding, which again, Richard may wish to just confirm.
Just come to Richard Way, because first and foremost, as far as I'm concerned, this was built into the budget last year. So,
yeah, I think the discussion was had after we'd, well, I think it was about exactly the same time we were setting last year's budget, and provision has been built in since for an additional pressure. You know, so there is that capacity within the budget. I think. What's not entirely decided upon yet is how that resource is to be expended. So that's the position in terms of where the budget is. And there's perhaps if David could update in terms of where we are with how the solution is would look. Thank you.
Please, David.
Yeah, what we agreed at the policy committee when the report was due to be brought was that it would be deferred until the work of the performance group, which is looking at the peer review, has looked at the whole of the planning service. And so it's that process that we're going through. So it certainly hasn't been forgotten, that requirement, but it's looking in the round at the entirety of the service and whether that's how it's overall managed or whether it's the individual officers.
Councillor Myers, do you want to come in on this, sister?
Well, if I can help, Chairman, part of the action plan that I will be presenting to the committee later on this evening promotes a one department view of planning, and that means that resources are shared between different aspects of planning. It means that officers who currently or historically have only dealt with planning policy will be available as officers to help with planning applications and matters of enforcement. So that in itself may help in that we don't have that are slightly underutilized. We can use in-house expertise. But yes, it may well be that the requirements put forward by the select committee will be met, and I do believe it is in the what we're announcing in terms of extra officers as far as the action plan are concerned, not to fill that gap, that's to implement the action plan. But we'll come to that in due course.
I'll take that as a half-hearted yes then, Chairman.
No, the money's there. The money's
It's there, Brian. It's a question of using it the most efficient way. Yes, it is there. But you, yes, as you'll appreciate, particularly with LGR, recruiting planning officers in any event is very difficult. Recruiting senior planning officers when you've got LGR it really isn't helping. But we are determined to make it work. Money's there.
Okay, thank you.
I've Councillor Nolan, then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. That all sounds rather woolly, and everybody seems a little bit uncomfortable with. I know it was Councillor Shuttleworth's question, but I remember the discussion that Councillor Shuttleworth referred to about a year ago. And I remember Councillor Brown, my colleague, bringing a query, I think to Audit Committee, I think it was, possibly policy, a good year and a half ago or something. Yeah, I think it was Audit, expressing his concerns from planning. And it seems the major concerns were there weren't enough officers and there wasn't enough training. And I thought from Councillor Shuttleworth's question, we were going to hear, yes, we've got a plan in place. We're going to appoint an extra officer or two extra officers. And there was going to be I thought I was going to hear, and even yourself, Councillor Myers, it was all a bit woolly. I thought we were going to hear a clear plan. And I think I made some notes this later on. There is a promise of a temporary planning officer being appointed. And that doesn't sound like the council has made some really sure, clear plans for the future to expand the planning department and have that expertise in the planning department. I don't hear a clear plan at all to address the issues with planning that have been going on for as long as I've been a councillor. That's only a year and a half, 2 years maybe, but we've all know there's problems. And I thought there was going to be extra planning officers. And you said, Councillor Foster, there's a problem in appointing, but I don't hear, have there been advertisements for people to expand the planning team? So I thought I'd hear a clear plan. I'm sure Councillor Shuttleworth thought he would as well. But.
Yes, there have been adverts for planning officers, and unfortunately, as Councillor Myers said, we haven't had a great deal of response to those adverts. But we also did do the peer review, and it came back with some recommendations. What we don't want to do is put a lot of people into places that we shouldn't have put people into before we've done the peer review. or implemented the well, it's no longer the peer review, it's now the planning improvement board that's looking into it. So the money's there, it's in the budget, it's a case of let's do it right, so we do it once rather than let's do it and then do it again, because in actual fact the implementation board, and let's make sure we do get this planning service. A lot of it can actually be done by improving the ways we work in-house. I think that's the crucial thing that came out of the peer review. And it's a case of let's spend that money and the ratepayers' money wisely, and let's not just throw another 3 planning officers at it and hope that cures the problem, because I'm not sure it will. So I think we need to give the implementation board time to get a grip of this, and it is doing. It's busy. It's working. It's active. So, Councillor Wheeler, then Councillor Barrett, then Councillor Iton.
I seem to have lost my raise hand function on this screen, so I'll be waving if I need to talk. Is there a provision for local government reorganisation in this budget? Because I can't seem to see it. And if so, where is it?
I don't know where we put that, under what heading it comes under. Paul Shevlin, do you have an answer for who pays for local government reorganisation?
We don't have a specific budget for that. As in the past, we come back to policy committee and ask for supplementary estimates, which we've done twice so far. That money is actually pooled with all the other districts and is held by Scarborough Borough Council. And I believe there's still some money, small amount left in that pot, which if we need to use it, clearly we'll go back to the leaders who will communicate with the members. During the consultation, which is the next period, we were told that we would have received a letter by last week, which we haven't as yet. But it's supposed to take place mid-February onwards, the consultation. The council is not allowed to campaign, therefore, in essence, not allowed to spend public money on any campaigning. Clearly, members are allowed to campaign one way or the other as they see fit. So during that period, I wouldn't expect any particular expenditure of finances. But as I say, if we do need additional sums, we will come back to policy committee.
A follow-up from Councillor Wheeler then. As we go through local government reorganisation, it's obviously going to take quite a lot of officer time. Who bears the cost of that? Is it just each individual organisation has to do that?
In essence, yes. You are still a sovereign body until the new unitary is formed. Not the shadow unitary, but the actual unitary. And timescale appears to be April 23. So Craven would still be the sovereign body and would undertake its duties and bear the expenditure accordingly. And that would apply to redundancies or indeed anything that occurred during that period.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett, but your hand's gone down, are you? You're okay. So Councillor Iton, then Councillor Myers. You're still muted, Councillor Iton.
Seems though it's struggling to unmute at times. It was regarding Councillor Shuttleworth's question, really. If I understand it right, I think it was about an enforcement officer that the select committee made a recommendation to policy to get further enforcement. Because at the time I said it doesn't just finish with enforcement, because if you're enforcing, then you need legal backup. So it's not just finished at that point. And if I recall right, the policy committee didn't take that any further through the peer review at the time. So there wasn't a decision to take that forward. If I recall it right, and if it is about the enforcement officer that Councillor Shuttleworth's inquiring about. Thank you, Chairman. Perhaps he'll let us know if it is.
Right, and I'll go to Councillor Myers.
Yes, Chairman. These days, thankfully, our policy committee tend to be very calm and and we don't get too cross. I am quite cross with Councillor Nolan saying that the council doesn't seem to have a plan for improving planning. The select committee reported on enforcement, Councillor Nolan, 1 officer, 2 officers for enforcement. We've had a peer review. There's an action plan at item 10 on your agenda that myself and senior councillors and officers and the LGA have spent many hours preparing. And to say that we haven't got a plan, I find slightly offensive. But I think perhaps you haven't read it carefully. There is a very clear plan for improving planning services across the board. And if it needs more resources, then it will have them. But at the moment, we need to get the plan in place. We need you to approve it. We need to recruit a senior external officer to drive it through, who will be objective and not have ties to Craven and Craven staff. And then we'll see what changes are made. But we have a very clear idea of what has to happen, and it's quite fundamental. And we do, in fact, have a training session on enforcement coming up, which we've initiated, not just for members, but for officers too, that we all understand and are updated on the best. But rest assured, Councillor Shuttleworth, it isn't forgotten, and we have been trying to recruit. It is difficult, but if we're switching resources, I hope, and it's something that I don't want to talk about the item 10 on the agenda under this item, but they have identified that we could better use our resources by having one planning department approach and using all officers to do all functions. They're all trained. Those that are trained to do all of it can do it, and we shouldn't be failing to do things simply because we're not using people in spatial planning to do enforcement or work for the planning committee. You know, they're there, and we can use. That's to will affect some immediate change.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. I haven't got any more hands raised. Oh, Councillor Nolan's re-raised. Go for it, Councillor Nolan.
Yeah, I was just going to say I have read the agenda and the reports in detail. I wouldn't understand it as well as you would, because you're sort of lead planning. So I apologise for any misunderstanding there. But it did concern me. I mean, you know, you have said it's going to be discussed later, but it did concern me that when I noticed that there was a temporary planning officer had been appointed, that seemed like kind of a stopgap rather than a kind of a long-term plan. But I appreciate that you're in the middle of trying to rearrange everything and appoint people. So I'll take that point on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Yeah, again, so, Councillor Rose, I see a Paul.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the comment about finding the raising hand button. It is no longer on my machine. It was there, but it's not now. So I'm afraid it's going to be flapping. Can I just make 2 points, please? Point 10.2 on page 7. I am just reassured that the climate emergency, which obviously we as a council have declared, is still very much on the agenda and included in commitments. In anticipation of financial commitments, will be the council's commitment is there financially. So I found that very reassuring. Thank you. And on page 31 of the report, I was also very reassured by a comment that any borrowing the council obviously becomes involved in is both affordable and sustainable. I have to say that comment does reassure me, because I do appreciate that borrowing will be part and parcel of future plans and capital projects. So 2 things there that I was reassured by. Generally, I just trust the monitoring. I have to say I have no real in-depth knowledge of financial management, shall we say. And I noted in paragraph 5.2 and 5.1 that there is constant monitoring of what's going on financially. And I'm putting my trust, and therefore the trust of the residents of Skipton West, in the team to keep things going as best they can. So thank you for that. And I've made a note to myself, an interesting read. But there we go. Thank you very much to the finance team.
Thank you, Councillor Rose. I think we all put our trust quite heavily on our officers when it comes to finances. And so far that trust has been well placed over the last few years, along with Councillor Mulligan, obviously, in the fact that, you know, we continue to be able to balance the budget. We're not having to make massive cuts to services or to staff or anything, that we continue to deliver a good quality of service, I think, Craven residents on the whole across the piece. And where we do find flaws, we do have money to invest in those services to bring them up to standard. So I do think it's challenging times, and have been challenging times a long time for local government. And yet again, we've got a budget on the table that we can approve. It is a council tax increase, but it's not massive in terms of 10p a week or £5 for the year. It's not a huge burden on the population. Unfortunately, other authorities can put the council tax up quite considerably. So I do see people's rate bills going up quite a lot this year. But as far as Craven goes, I think we do our bit. I think you get good value for money, whatever it is, £3.50 a week to get your bins emptied in a Band D property. Just that alone is a pretty good service. I know how much a skip costs these days, and they're not cheap things to purchase. So we've got a balanced budget. I don't know whether we'd second Councillor Mulligan, but I'm happy to second it from the chair. And really pleased, and thanks to the officers and members and all of you alike. It's been decisions we've made in the past that mean we can also have that opportunity to have that balanced budget today. So thanks to everybody, and thanks to the residents of Craven for sticking by us and making sure it works as well. So on that note, I'm guessing we'll need to go to a vote. Vicky,
Yes.
so if you'd like to take the vote.
Okay, so I'll just call your name out, please, and if you could just say whether you're for, against, or you're abstaining. Chairman?
For.
Councillor Barrett?
For.
Councillor Ireton?
For.
Councillor Liss?
For.
Councillor Madeley?
For.
Councillor Metcalfe?
For.
Councillor Morell?
I unfortunately came late to the meeting, so I'm going to abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Mulligan? Okay. For the record, Councillor Mulligan is for the proposal. Councillor Myers?
For.
Councillor Noland?
For.
Councillor Place?
For.
Councillor Rose?
For.
Councillor Wheeler?
For.
And Councillor Shuttleworth?
For.
Thank you. That's approved, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. I'm slightly worried now because we're on the capital programme and it looks like Councillor Mulligan can't unmute. Have you spacebar, Patrick? Does that work? Try your spacebar. All right, it's disappeared off. I'm guessing he's going to re-log back in. Do you want to hold for Councillor Mulligan? I'm guessing he won't be long.
Give him a minute, Chairman, and
Yes, we should do.
Yeah, I'll give him a minute because it's sort of, he's a lead member for this. I could spiel onto it, but it's probably better coming from Patrick Hughes. The beauty of Zoom meetings. Now, if we were in the council chamber, he couldn't possibly have managed to mute himself.
certainly better than the Teams meetings we've had recently.
Any sign, Vicky or Guy?
Not yet.
my hand, but it's somewhere else.
You have raised it.
If it's any help, Chairman, I think that if you go to the lower part of the screen, you have one icon, or I certainly have, saying reactions. If you click on reactions, it then gives you the option to raise your hand.
Similarly, Chairman, if you go into participate, scroll down to the bottom right of that panel, there is a raise hand function.
Yeah, I think some of us have lost that function.
Yeah, I certainly have.
But
But now I've found reactions, all is well.
Yeah.
Will the officer not present this report, Chairman?
Yeah, we better move on, aren't we? Richard, will you speak to the capital programme report?
Yeah, happy to, Chair. If anybody notices Councillor Mulligan returning as I'm talking, just please shout and I'll stop. But so item 6 is the capital programme. These are essentially the new items that will go into the programme for 21-22. The programme is 2.2 million. Projects range from disabled facilities grants awards, acquisition of waste management, road sweepers, etc., investment in ICT, maintenance work at the crematorium and the leisure sector.
Councillor Mulligan is back.
He's in the room.
Thank you, Chair.
Richard had just started, Patrick, so if you want to get going.
Shall I do it, or is Richard going to carry on?
You do it. And then...
Okay. I do apologize for that. I have no idea what happened there. Right, let me just bring my notes up. Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your patience, everyone. So this report, this is the capital program report. This report presents the proposed capital program for 21-22 and the indicative program for 22-23 to 24-25. The proposed program is £2.3 million. There will be projects carrying over from 2021, such as the shared ownership scheme and other development projects. So these projects range from the disabled facility grants, awards, acquisition of waste management, road sweeping vehicles, IT investment, maintenance work at the crematorium and the leisure center. And Appendix A sets out the detail of the projects, which have been prioritized by both corporate and senior leadership teams. For a number of the projects that are included within the program, the council is able to attract external funding towards the cost. 1.8 million pounds of grant funding and capital receipts may be available for the 21-22 program. The third quarter budget monitoring is currently being prepared and there will be slippage identified. This will be confirmed at the quarterly Q4 outturn report. And the recommendations are in paragraph 2, and I would move those, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mulligan. Members' hands, questions on the capital programme? It's obviously going to move a bit in year as well, isn't it, with projects coming forward, and I haven't yet gone on to it, but we are actually starting to move some of the things that have sat on it for a long time off the capital programme, which I think is a good thing. Things that have slipped for not years but decades probably. So you know, I think it's a positive capital programme, but I'll leave it for members' comments. I'm happy to second it from the chair to save a bit of time on this one. Councillor Rose, you've got your hand up. Is that a latent hand, or would you like to speak?
It is a real one this time. Again, I think it is encouraging to note that the items on the Appendix B make a lot of sense. They're highly commendable, and it's good that the climate emergency again is firmly on the financial agenda. So that's a good thing. I'm going to ask a question I haven't dared ask for quite some time, but could somebody please define slippage? Thank you.
It's where we promise to spend some money on a capital programme, but then we don't manage to do it within that year. So things like the town hall, which we said we'd have all the money spent by, and we have to put stuff in that we say we're going to spend in each of the capital programmed years. But then what we don't do is actually get a chance to spend the whole of the budget within the year. So it slips over into the next year and then becomes part of the next year's capital programme. So it's allocated, it just hasn't been spent. Am I right, Richard? Do I get a point for that?
I'd give you 2 points for that, Chair. Well done. Thank you.
I've no members
Thank you
wishing to
very
speak or question the capital programme at this point. So I'm guessing we'll need a vote on this one as well, Vicky.
Yes, please, Chair. So it's been proposed and seconded for the recommendations for agenda item 6. So if I just call your name out, please can you say whether you're for, against, or you're abstaining? Chairman?
For.
Councillor Barrett?
For.
Councillor Ireton?
For.
Councillor Liss?
For.
Councillor Madeley?
For.
Councillor Metcalfe? Sorry, Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Metcalfe, can you hear us or have you frozen?
Yep, I can. It's just a bit intermittent.
Okay.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morell?
For.
Councillor Mulligan?
Or.
Councillor Myers?
For.
Councillor Noland?
For.
Councillor Place?
For.
Councillor Rose?
Or.
Councillor Wheeler?
For.
And Councillor Shuttleworth?
For.
Thank you. That's approved, Chairman. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. So moving on, the next one is the council plan. It's basically a continuation of last year's, and we've got a council plan until potentially we stop being a council. I suppose that's the major thing. So it is as is. I think if you read from the report, on the whole, we've got pretty good take up from the budget response that we're heading down the right lines with our council plan, that people agree with what we're doing. I mean, some of it's slightly dropped in their sort of support ratios, but carbon neutrality obviously gone up. There is a lot of work going on in all these different areas, and there continues to be that. So, I mean, I'm just happy to move the council plan on and the recommendations really at 2, that we will amend if it is necessary, and we'll sort some performance indicators out for members to note that we're doing it properly. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned performance indicators. Having looking through it, it's quite an exhaustive and ambitious document. And the point that's made at the start, for £3.50 a week, this council provides one heck of a lot. However, I'm mindful of a comment in the revenue budget report where it talks about we cannot guarantee to carry on the high level of service that we're giving with the uncertain financial future that's ahead of us. And I'm just wondering, Chairman, how you feel about whether we are as in a strong position to deliver on this plan as we were this time last year, and how we can mitigate.
I'd like to think that we are. I would also like to think that these are the things that we should be doing for Craven, so therefore this should be written down on a sheet of paper and we should be trying to deliver them, and officers and members should be focusing on the delivery of these things. So will we deliver it all? Will we deliver it all if there's local government reform? Probably not. But let's get on and deliver as much as we possibly can, because some of this I feel will not get delivered after local government reform, because it'll become well, not necessarily Craven will become a backwater, but it'll become more difficult to deliver these within Craven when there's other pressures from other areas, depending on who we get joined up with through local government reform. So it's a case of, coronavirus has taken a huge amount of steam from the organisation this year, but we have carried on doing stuff, the reports on Edgewood Lane, the fact that the investments at Langcliffe Quarry, all those sort of things that are all sort of like the backbone, or a lot of the backbone of these, they're still going ahead, we're still getting on, we're still delivering. So, yep, not going to be easy. It's never easy. I always think council plan should be a bit ambitious. But we need to keep going at it until such time as either Craven survives or becomes defunct. But we want to get as many of these over the line as possible before then. Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what Councillor Wheeler says. It is ambitious, and I do hope that we manage to get as much of this achieved as possible before we disappear into the ether, so to speak. And it would be just so good, page 17, looking at the big things that we as a council have done, for example, the Puppet Festival and the Tour de Yorkshire, etc. It would be so good if we do get a chance post-COVID to be able to just, if you like, the final fling of CDC is something rather splendid. I certainly obviously support those events wholeheartedly. The plan as it is, it does look splendid, but it's literally fingers crossed, can we get it all done? One sincerely hopes so. And again, thank you for putting it together. It's very neatly put together with my teacher eye on. It's very neat and tidy. Thank you.
Paul Shevlin, do you want to come in on the?
Just very briefly, I won't repeat what you said, Chair, which I wholeheartedly agree with. But just to say the uncertainty really is rising from the budget, from the government delaying the implementation of the rate reform, fair funding review, and a whole host of other things, and of course COVID affecting the expenses. So this time next year, I'm not sure what we'll be presenting to you. It could be absolutely dire, or it could be, we can certainly have a balanced budget for the following 12 months and maintain your priorities, because the council plan is the heart of your priorities. That's what you want to deliver. That's why it was developed very much with members in order to reflect your views and those of the community. So they're the officers. You tell us what to do. That is the priority list for the officers to deliver. As I say, you set a balanced budget. Well, you've recommended to council to set a balanced budget for 21-22. 22-23 could be more of a challenge because of the various reviews and the immense uncertainty in financial circles in government, which will be cascaded down to local government. Thanks, Chair.
Well, personally, I'd hate to say that we're going to set a council plan that said, well, what we'll do is we'll empty your bins, we'll do housing services and housing and homeless services. We'll make sure there's a dog warden, we'll do street naming, but we'll do all the basic jobs, but not have any ambition in there. But if that's what a budget comes out and says, that with no money to do any of the ambitious projects, then where we'll be, unfortunately. But while we can still have an aspirational council plan, and we've still got we can finance and have a balanced budget to do it, I think we need to stick with it. Of councillors Madeley and then Myers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to agree with everything you said, that the council plan and what is on it, we have to get on and do this if we can, because once there's shadow authorities and everybody gets round to everything, and we haven't got certain things done, and we haven't got in case of the town hall, we haven't got that completely finished and and also looking for the long-term future of it, I think we will not be getting the help we need from the future, like a fire team, whatever it is. And we should, as you say, finish off what we do, and we need to get on with it. And as long as we can do it, we should be doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Medley. Councillor Myers.
Yes, Chairman, I'm not going to repeat whatever. We're a small local authority, but we've always, and certainly in my time on the council, done a lot more than simply collect bins. And through the determination of councillors across the board, and through the hard work and foresightedness of officers, we have done great things. We have attracted, I think, in excess of £40 million of external investment in Craven over the last 10 years. And that is no mean feat. And those who were involved in things like the Skipton Master Plan and the Triangle, the Heritage Action Zone, you know that, you know, we are quite good at delivering things, and that's why we have historically had a good relationship with the LEP and other funders. So we mustn't cease to be ambitious whilst we still exist for our residents. That's what we're here for, to do the best we can for them and for the future of Craven. And we'll try and set things in place to make sure that that legacy is safeguarded.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Looking round, I've no more hands up or people waving or anything. So do we need to vote the council plan through, Vicky?
Yes, please, but it's not been seconded, Chair. Somebody
I'll
can
second it. I'll second it, Vicky. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm for Vicky while I'm unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Iton.
For.
Councillor Liss.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Metcalfe.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morell.
For.
Councillor Mulligan.
For.
Councillor Myers.
For.
Councillor Noland.
For.
Councillor Place.
For.
Councillor Rose.
Oh, sorry. For.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
And Councillor Shuttleworth.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimously approved, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, members. Moving on to agenda item D. Over to you, Patrick, for the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Minimum Revenue Position Statement and Annual Investment Strategy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this item, members, prior to the start of the year, the council's required to approve its 1, Treasury Management Strategy, 2, Minimum Revenue Provision Policy, 3, Investment Strategy for the coming year, and 4, Prudential Indicators. This report covers these requirements, which are contained in the strategy attached to the report in appendices A to C. The Treasury Management Strategy also defines the council's approach and limitations around investments. The underpinning principles of investment policy are to assess security, liquidity, and yield in that order. The Treasury Strategy sets the limits around how much cash can be invested in which type of institution at any one time. The Treasury Management updates will be reported to the committee throughout the year. And the recommendations are in section 2, and I would move those. I think there's one alteration to, I think there's a typo in one of the recommendations. Could Richard Way please come in and just explain that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. It's just the first bullet point in the recommendations at 2.1. We amended this report recently to take account of the decisions to invest in additional borrowing. So the the operational boundary limit that says 12.5 million has been increased to 14 million, and that's what's represented in the report. It's just that that recommendation wasn't updated and should have been. So apologies for that, but it should be 14 million, not 12.5. Thank you.
So I will move the recommendations with that amendment, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mulligan. Thank you, Richard. Looking for members' hands anywhere?
I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Not seeing a lot of waving. It doesn't often offer a lot of questions up, doesn't it? The Treasury Management report, even though it's quite an important report, and with investments that we make, can actually, in a way, make us quite a bit of money in a year if we invest wisely, and both our debts and our capital. But yet again, trust in the finance team, I think, probably shows a lack of hands on this one. Do we need a vote on this, Vicky?
Yes, please, Chair.
Certainly then. I'm for again, Vicky.
Thank you. So this is for the Treasury Management statement. So if I can just read your name out. Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Ireton.
For.
Councillor Liss.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Metcalfe, are you for this recommendation?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Morell.
For.
Councillor Mulligan.
For.
Councillor Myers.
For.
Councillor Noland.
For.
Councillor Place.
For.
Councillor Rose.
For.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
And Councillor Shuttleworth.
For.
Okay. Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9 then. Pay policy statement. Councillor Metcalfe, I believe you're delivering this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I hope everybody can hear me okay, because my internet is unstable for whatever reason. So apologies for any delays. I am hearing everything, but I think there's a bit of a delay. So apologies for that. Yeah, the purpose of this report is basically to seek approval from the council on the pay policy. And as per section 38 of the Localism Act, the pay policy is produced and published every year. And it does just apply to staff members with salaries exceeding 58k, which you can see in the appendix. So that's it.
Thank you. I assume you're moving that, Councillor Metcalfe.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chair. My sort of general inquiry is with respect, or comment is to do with ensuring we attract suitable staff and retain them. Obviously, I'm assuming this is linked to pay, etc. And may I suggest it might also link back to the planning issue and stuff there. But I assume that the pay scales that are on offer do just that. They attract suitable staff and retain them. Can anybody reassure me on that, or add to that for me? Thank you.
I'm assuming our staff levels are fairly well, our pay levels are fairly well benchmarked, and also it's based on the local government pay awards, isn't it, Paul? If you can, maybe Paul Shevlin might be the best one to help you with that too.
Yeah, so pay awards are negotiated nationally and implemented locally, so we don't have too much flexibility there. We do benchmark. One of the problems is, though, that we are a small authority and we are surrounded to our south in particular by large authorities who do pay more money for the individual posts. So we will always have to compete on the beauty area and the environment in which they live, including schooling, etc., as one of the attractive points. We can't always compete in pure financial terms for officers at some of the salary levels that we set. And it would also be difficult to exceed those salary levels. Every now and then we will give a market supplement if we feel that we need to retain or attract staff, and we certainly have done that in the past. Doesn't particularly apply to those who are covered by this pay policy, because this is the senior officers report that was introduced by Mr. Pickles when he was Secretary of State. So this is an annual report that you'll get, which shows all those officers' posts which are remunerated above 58,000. I think one of the key things to look at is also the ratio. If you compare that with any, or certainly the private sector ratios that I've seen, well, there isn't a comparison in truth. It is far, far, far lower, and it compares with all authorities, again, the ratios that I've seen. So we are well within that ratio, and I think we perform well as an authority, partly because of that.
I second it, Chairman. Check the recommendation.
Councillor Iton.
Second it.
Thank you. I've no other members wishing to speak, so we've done our bit. Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe, in doing that. And I'm assuming we need a vote again, Vicky.
If you don't mind, Chair, because this is going to council, so if I just call your name out.
I'm for, Vicky.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
For.
Councillor Iton.
For.
Councillor Liss.
For.
Councillor Madeley.
For.
Councillor Metcalfe.
For.
Councillor Morell.
For.
Councillor Mulligan.
For.
Councillor Myers.
For.
Councillor Noland.
For.
Councillor Place.
For.
Councillor Rose.
For.
Councillor Wheeler.
For.
And Councillor Shuttleworth.
For.
Okay, that's unanimously approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Moving on then, agenda item 10. Councillor Myers said he'd keep members updated with this. It's a very live subject within the council. So over to you, Councillor Myers, to give us an update on where you are with the peer challenge.
Yes, I think to quote the immortal Frank Zappa, this is the crux of the biscuit, members. I don't need to re-air the background to the peer challenge, nor indeed what was contained in the report. It was a very frank report and identified a number of failings and made a number of suggestions as to improvements. And so we set up a improvement board with the express objective of responding to the peer challenge and to produce an improvement action plan. Members have set out in the appendix to this report. There are some very fundamental changes that have to be made. Some things are relatively easy, as members will imagine. It's relatively easy to have more training for officers and for members. It's relatively easy to implement various structural changes. It's the culture that's going to be the difficult one. And that is going to require members and officers to work closely together. It was really as a sort of by the by on the pay structure that we were just discussing in item 9, and members' comments about the requirement for an additional officer in enforcement I do know that much more bigger financially councils than us, such as Harrogate, have a number of vacancies in their planning department. It isn't the easiest thing to fix. That is one of those areas where the public sector is very attracted to trained planning officers. And we know that at Craven because so many of our officers and historically have gone off to work in the private sector. So of course, we very much take on board what's the select committee said, and we are prepared to resource additional staff where it's required. But the changes that the implementation, the improvement action plan set out are more fundamental than simply throwing money at it and acquiring more staff. And there's no point in simply throwing money at it if the service is dysfunctional. So we've got to get it right. And so to that end, as members will see, various things have already happened, not least that Guy Close has been asked to take a more active role in planning and training, and that he's been allocated more hours to do that. We have sought external help. The temporary officer that members have referred to, Councillor Nolan was referring to, is an officer to oversee the implementation of this action plan. Somebody who is not council bred, as it were, somebody from outside to see that this happens, whether it's easily done or not. It's somebody to take tough decisions and to push this through and to push it through as quickly as possible. And I do know from speaking to Paul Ellis today that we have been interviewing. There is a potential candidate with a very impressive record, and that's subject to his current employment circumstances, we would hope he would be able to start very soon. So good news there. So members, I do recommend this action plan. I have asked various members in passing for their comments on it. I have received some. I'm afraid I haven't had time to address those properly and consider them with the officers, but very happy to do so. And you know, this is an ongoing thing, and it's something that we're all involved in. We all want to see a first-class planning, enforcement, and spatial planning department. Something that we must see. So, as I say, very happy to get feedback from members, any suggestions, and we'll always take them to the board. So I move the recommendation of the report and ask members to approve the improvement action plan set out in the appendix.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. I've Councillor Shuttleworth, then Councillor Nolan so far, and Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I will say at the outset that there are some very sound principles in this review and recommendations. Like a lot of other things, I think the devil is in the detail, which is still to be resolved. And there are one or two things that I could comment on. I don't want to bore you all, particularly those members who aren't familiar with some of the planning processes, but presumably members will be able to have input into the development and implementation of these recommendations on an ongoing basis. And on what basis would those references back for support be made? I hope that's clear.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Shuttleworth, it's not my action plan or David Smurthwaite's action plan or the chief executive's, it's your action plan, our action plan. And yes, we want members' input, and we're going to have a very regular meeting to make sure that it is being implemented and that it's working. And members' feedback is going to be essential in knowing that that's happening. I don't sit on the planning committee. You know, we need your input, and so you can always address issues through myself or of course the chair of planning, Councillor Brockbank, or through you know, the officers, and particularly I would hope when we have the senior temporary officer in place, he will be very accessible to members, or he or she, I don't know. So you know, you're going to have that as a point of reference.
And presumably through you, Chairman, at various points, planning committee would be consulted on some aspects, and would that be on a regular basis or an ad hoc basis, depending on how and when?
I would hope it would be fairly regular. These things benefit from having a fairly tight sort of timetable, really, because it's very easy to let things drift, isn't it? And to indulge in nice words that suit everybody. There's all a warm, fuzzy feeling, actually achieve nothing. The point of this is we have to achieve it. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. We're all wasting our time. So, and I'd be very happy to have some form of regular feedback, whatever. We can work something out between us, so that members have input. And we need to know how it's progressing, how it's working, how both officers and members in planning feel that progress is being made. There's no point in me talking to the chief executive and David Smurthwaite or Ellis and thinking it's all going terribly smoothly if it isn't. You'll be the judges.
Thank you. That's given me quite a degree of confidence. Is there going to be, well, I understand that it's possibly not going to be, shall we say, easy to do things on a regular basis, as and when, and would that be for the full planning committee or a particular membership, a proportion of membership? Or haven't we got to that level of detail?
I don't think we've really got to that stage. I mean, obviously the chair sits on the implementation board. It needs to be something that's workable, doesn't it? And not, not a sort of just a sort of a grievance club, because we've got to get past that. We've got to make progress. So I mean, by all means, you discuss it with the chair and vice chair of planning, and I'll talk to them and the officers and see what the best and most accountable way forward is. But it's got to be practical. But I do agree it needs to be regular. We need to get on with this. In the limited time we have left, I want this straight before we're finished.
Yeah.
I see the end of my career as a councillor with this not working.
Yeah. Good, thank you. That's given me quite a degree of confidence. I think it's maintenance of regular communication that's the key to all this.
Tend to agree. Communication's the big one. I've councillors Nolan, Metcalfe, Liss, and Rose. So, Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Chair. Once back into the fray, 3 little points here. Firstly, I welcome the input of planning expertise from outside the council. That can only be for our benefit. Secondly, in 6.1, it says there's a brief line, and maybe I think Paul drafted it. It says a strong performing planning services is central to supporting the economy. I think it'd be well worth adding a few other things. I think a strong performing planning service would to support the officers and the councillors who are making decisions week in, week out, and quite detailed ones. I think we need to say something about supporting the residents, because I think there's a degree of frustration, stroke anger among residents about the councillors' work, and it's just the officers' work, and it's frustration perhaps that maybe there's just not enough officers to go round to provide the service, and people ring up and wanting an answer straight away and maybe don't understand. I don't know. And the other thing is to increase or maintain the council's credibility. I think to have a strong planning service, and I think it's a bit of embarrassment for us all that a planning service got a bit of a knock. And I agree, it's the whole council that's got to take that. I'm not focusing on the officers, I'm focusing on everything. It's officers, councillors, the whole thing. Because as ward councillors, we're involved in the planning service and responding to residents. The last point, it's in action plan page 3. I think it's recommendations 5, 6, and 8, and there's a note to say allow more time to deal with the last minute information. And I certainly sense, only as a substitute on planning, and I haven't actually sat on a planning committee, so I'm prepared to take some flack on this, Simon, but a frustration that councillors were getting last minute information quite regularly. Now, maybe a revamped planning service would that's not going to happen. But if there's last minute advice, it's not arriving on time. I think often arriving on the morning of a planning meeting, councillors haven't got enough time to digest that and respond to it in detail. And I know councillors are frustrated and that they're not getting enough time to consider that. So maybe we shouldn't be putting something in there to say, allow more time to deal with last minute information. Maybe we should be saying, making sure that all the information has got out there in time for people to respond to. And if it hasn't, then maybe that item should slip and another item is dealt with on planning.
I think that is the intention of that, actually.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of it, because I know that is very frustrating members, and I have to say objectively, and as you know, I'm not on the planning. I simply don't understand it. I don't understand why planning applications which have months before they reach the committee end up being dealt with things that have been served sometimes the morning of the meeting. It just seems entirely unacceptable. So I know we're all concerned about that. Yeah, and thank you for reading.
Thank you.
Very frustrating for members.
Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, Simon, I can see how much work has gone into that, and a huge amount. However, I can also see that the work that needs to be done going forward is even on a grander scale, for sure. And this type of plan requires people to and in order to get the engagement. I suppose the question to you is, how do you think both officers and members of planning will embrace this? I do have a second question as well.
Yes, I can see those welcoming arms of Councillor Shuttleworth and Councillor Liss, Councillor Brockbank. I think I would hope that all members and all officers acknowledge the failings of our planning service, wherever they think the blame might lie, but share a determination to put it right. I do believe that. I believe that from the way they cooperated with the peer review, from conversations I've had with them. What we have to do is bridge the divide that sometimes exists between two aspects of our planning service that should work together, and it should be a harmonious relationship. And it isn't always, and there may be many reasons for that. And members will identify them and officers will identify them. We have to work very hard to bridge that. But I think with the goodwill of members and the goodwill of officers, and somebody from outside to discipline us, keep us in check, and to make us focus on the right objective, and we'll achieve it. I really do. I think it's great goodwill in members of the planning committee. I know that. Yeah.
And do you think where things perhaps haven't gone right in the past, is it likely that sort of real life examples will be used as learning opportunities to get things right in the future if they crop up again?
I would certainly hope so. Yes. Yeah. It's a sort of truth and reconciliation job, isn't it? We've got to stop apportioning blame. We have to learn from our mistakes, whether that is members, officers, applicants, parish councils, ward members. We all have to learn from our mistakes and put it right. And yes, you don't learn anything by denying your history. And you learn good practice from looking at bad practice. So yes, I think it's highly relevant. But I mean, I don't think we have the time or the energy, given the task ahead, to spend our time stewing over past mistakes. But yes, we have to learn from it.
Thank you.
Councillor Lace.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. There's an awful lot of good stuff in this, an awful lot of good stuff. I have to say, Councillor Nolan has stolen quite a bit of what I wanted to say. Not stolen, but come up with the kind of thinking that I was contemplating, and that is, in the good stuff, we have on page 2, right at the very top, we've got parish and member notifications. This is great. This is what we need to recognise, but we need to pay more than lip service to it. We need to actually do this. Currently, I'm aware, and I'm sure quite a number of members are aware, that there's a lack of trust, I think, from some members of the public, and indeed some members of the authority. We've got to work more closely together, but let's ensure that every report that we get to committee has got every bit of information that is relevant at that particular point of making the decision. And let's also ensure that once a planning application has been approved by delegated authority or indeed by committee, that any changes to that receive the same amount of consultation that the initial application had, so that we can be assured that we know exactly what we get in, and we can say to the people that we represent, no, we said that's what we're going to do, and that is what's happened. I think that's really, really important. But it's mentioned in the report. I think there's just a bit more detail that it needs, Councillor Myers. But great, good report, good stuff. I think we all knew, even before we got the peer review, that things weren't going quite right. And I think all of us here will have agreed with a good deal of what the peer review team has said. And I, for one, agree with an awful lot of what your improvement committee has said as well. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, and point taken, noted, and you can hold my toes to the fire on that one.
Councillor Rose and Councillor Aiton.
Thank you, Chair. Indeed, as a fairly recent member of the committee, I do want to feel that confidence of knowing that we have got all the right information for each and every application that does come to committee, and that we're not going to be caught on the back foot because we just didn't know, or something slipped through and suddenly appeared later on. So that confidence is something I'm really looking forward to. Secondly, the crucial thing as far as I'm concerned is that there is a good communication between officers and members. that if we want to ask a question, however small or insignificant it might be, that we can and do get a response. And I have had a top tip which did work, and that is get the person you want to speak to on Teams. Emails get lost. Phone calls disappear into the ether. If I'm busy reading an application, I want to see somebody, I want to find out straight away what's going on. Now, I do appreciate that officers are busy, but then we're quite busy as well, and we're not being paid for it. And if I'm following something through, I want to know I can speak to somebody as soon as possible. So I'm really looking forward to that ease of communication.
Well, I think the other point on that, if I might just interject for a second, Councillor, is that a great deal of time is wasted and resources if those questions aren't answered. Because you end up with things before the committee being adjourned and the whole thing's been a waste of time.
Yeah.
And other applications that should have been heard aren't heard. There's a short committee meeting unnecessarily. No, we need to know that everything's good to go by the time you turn up on a Monday lunchtime.
Yes, I mean, I want Mandel, just very briefly, obviously Mandel's in my ward and I'm following that through. I want to know I've got every single duck in a row. I want to know before the meeting that I know what I want to say at that meeting, if it ever comes up, and that I'm not going to look an idiot, that I'm not going to waste people's time, that I'm going to be able to make a sound and sensible contribution, having gone through all the background bits and pieces that you know, do, as you say, waste time in a meeting. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've given it a practice and I'm going to carry on. So officers beware is what I'm saying. I also think the training thing is excellent, and ongoing training is always important, keeping us up to date. And the last thing I want to say is that with any of these sort of plans, those of us involved, as Councillor Shuttleworth said, we need to feel ownership and we need to feel that we can review and work alongside your very good self and Councillor Brocklebank just to keep this organic. You know, it's a bit like school policies. I got through the whole of my teaching career with writing none of them because they always go out the window as soon as you've written them down, planning things. You know, this isn't it, is it? This is the first stage. This could be thrown away. We're going to work on it and move on. Is how I see it. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. Thank you very much for all the work done.
Very well said.
Richard, I think it's Councillor Ireton next. You're muted. You're muted, Richard.
I think he might be frozen, Councillor Myers.
No, I'm not.
You, okay.
Alive. Councillor Ireton.
Are you sure you're okay, Richard, up there?
So far, so good.
A simple question, Simon, really. Have you identified where the problem lies? That, you know, why we've got into the state we have with this peer review and the damning report that we received? Have you identified what's gone wrong, both members and officers in the department?
I
don't see anything in this report.
No. Well, I have no eyes to see into another man's soul, to quote St. Thomas More. But I have my own ideas. Yes, I do, and I think they're borne out in lovely, gentle public sector speak in the peer review. I think if you read in the lines, you can exactly what you may have thought all along is borne out in partly what they do say and what they don't say. But as I say, I think the main thing is that we identify how we fix the problem rather than blaming people for past mistakes. But everybody will have to shape up, you know. It won't be right unless they do. So yeah. But I'm sure you have your own ideas, Councillor Ireton.
I don't know. I don't sit on the planning, so I've no idea. But you know, what has changed? What has changed? You know, why they're the way they've got to deal with things. You know, if something goes wrong, you need to identify where it's gone wrong.
Oh yes, yeah.
You know, there's one or two of these where it's mentioned parish and ward members, parish councils and development. You know, surely parish councils aren't holding up any planning application. They're a consultee and that's it.
Oh yes, yeah.
You know,
but
so I was just wondering, you know, whether it has been identified where the old thing has gone wrong.
Well, there are different aspects to how it's gone wrong, I think. The one you're referring to is the delay. It's the fact that applications that never make it to the planning committee seem to get lost in the ether. And I think every ward member knows about ones in their ward that have taken straightforward things on the face of it, that have taken an unconscionable amount of time, and they never come before the committee. And it's not a question of, no, it's not parish councils, it's not ward members, it's not the committee members. There's something else that's wrong.
That's it. So that needs identifying, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
You need to identify it before you can put it right. I would have thought.
There need to be better structures in place and better checks. And
so they've altered the structures from when it was operating well then. So the structures have been altered, I take it.
That was sort of maybe before my time.
Yeah.
Do you remember when it was operating well?
I do remember when it's operated well. Yeah.
Yeah. You see, you've been around a very long time, Councillor Ireton.
You know, so
yeah.
You know, if it's the structures that's wrong, what's altered in those structures from when the structure was being used and it was operating well to when it's not? Anyhow, that's just a very simple question. Thank you.
Okay. Simple on the face of it, Councillor.
Thank you, Simon.
Surprised you didn't demand a yes or no answer. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't even dream of doing that, dear.
No,
but to the chairman of planning even.
We appear to be moving into news now. I mean, I do think that the peer review identified the problems, and what Councillor Myers and Councillor Brockbank and officers are now trying to come to terms with is how we put it back right. And yeah, some of the things we did in the past were correct, and now we seem to have lost those policies for whatever reason, or the way we operated. But planning has never been perfect, because planning never can be perfect. Because one person, if there's two sides to an argument with planning, when the decision's made, somebody loses. But we need to make sure that that decision is made for members and officers with all the information in front, and making sure that everybody's been consulted. I mean, the peer review, it was brutal, and it came out with the things we were doing wrong, and it's a case of fixing it now. And I think this is the first step in a lot of steps to fixing it, really. Some things have moved forward already, some things are moving forward now. We will get there with this. I've got confidence in Councillor Myers, Councillor Brockbank, the planning committee and the officers, because that was one thing that did come out of the peer review, is everybody wants Craven to have a better planning service than it has now. And so huge confidence that we're going to get there.
I would fully agree with you, leader.
Yeah, huge confidence we're going to get there. I don't believe it's been seconded, so I'm happy to second from the chair.
Chairman, could I just say as well to Councillor Ireton that I hope one of the comforts he'll be able to take from the temporary appointment of a senior officer to implement aspects of this plan in the department is that they will have a very close eye on structure and the way that applications move through the department, and that if there are time delays, why? That's the big question, isn't it? Why do simple applications take 12 months, not 6 weeks? Yeah. So don't worry, that will not be ignored.
I'm guessing it's just a note, this. I see Annette nodding, so are members happy to note the progress? And Councillor Myers, I'm assuming you'll be back at some point to refer to future progress on this?
Yeah, I'm sure I will, Chairman.
Noted, Chairman.
So looking around, everybody, nobody seems to be shouting or bawling. So with that note, members, I move that we go into private session because there's a bit of detail on council finances on the next one. If somebody can second that.
Happy
I've got
to,
seconded.
Chairman. Yeah.
Right, thank you, Councillor Myers. Looking round, anybody against us going into private session on this one?